Good evening. My name is Stacy Johnson and I'm here with your local news. This morning, 2 mangled bodies were found in a quiet neighborhood near Junction City, Oregon. The bodies seemed to be of a Mr. and Mrs. Matthews. They were the parents of a young boy by the name of Ashton Matthews, whose body was not found at the scene. The only evidence of the suspected murder was a note signed by someone under the name Jeff the Killer, and a knife covered in blood. All nearby residents are being asked to take extra precaution throughout the day and night. If you notice anyone of suspicious behavior, contact police immediately. That will be all for the news tonight. Have a safe and happy Halloween. I walked along my long, barren dirt road. I'd been studying for the English test and happened to stay out later than I had anticipated. A small sliver of the moon hung above the tall, dark pine trees. It was rather cloudy, so the moon did not illuminate the street as much as I would have liked, causing me to squint in order to see as much as an inch in front of my nose. The wind had picked up earlier that day, and now it was practically blowing me off my feet. I struggled to keep my hair from blowing into my face as I felt a chill run up my spine. It felt as though 2 eyes bored into my back. I spun around, expecting to come face to face with another person, but to my surprise, I only faced darkness. I shook my head, trying to get rid of my paranoia, and continued down the dusty trail. It was a weekday, and just as any other Wednesday night, there was not a single car or person in sight. I laughed in spite of myself for thinking anyone else would be out on a cold fall night like this. I slowly turned the corner where the only street lamp stood, flickering a pale yellow color. My house was just on the other side of this dim light, and as I approached it, I could have sworn I saw a tall, dark figure silhouetted against the front wall of my house. I tried focusing on the figure, but just as I had spotted it, it was gone. My eyes must be playing tricks on me, I thought to myself before walking into my driveway. As I was on the front porch, I noticed that the window was shattered and shards of glass were strewn across the lawn. I stuck my head past the jagged edges and called into the darkness. "Hello?" My voice echoed into the dark room, but other than that, there was no response. I grabbed the doorknob and tried to turn it to only find out it was locked. Cautiously, I tried to slip through the window pane, but my arm was caught onto a piece of glass jutting out from the wall. I yelped in pain and jumped back to see a gash cut into the meaty flesh of my upper arm. I held my hand over it and tried to keep my blood from spilling out onto the floor. I crept quietly across the hallway, slowly starting to panic as my thoughts began to race through my mind. Where could my parents be? I slid my hand along the wall and fumbled for a light switch. When I found one, I flicked it on, and what I saw chilled me to my very core. Coming from my parents' room was a pool of blood, a deep, sickly shade of dark red. I let go of my own wound to cover my mouth, sank to my knees in front of the slightly ajar door, right as a slight gust of wind slowly opened the bedroom door, as if displaying to me what had happened. While I was away, my parents were viciously slaughtered, and now in front of me they lay on the floor of their room soaking in their own blood. I needed to call the police. I quickly got up from the floor and stumbled across the carpet. I felt faint and my head was fuzzy. I barely made it a few steps before collapsing in front of my own bedroom. I pulled myself off the ground to come face to face with a tattered piece of paper stuck to the door. There was a red blotchy handwriting scrawled across the page. It was hardly legible. I took it off my wall and held it in my hands. It read, "You have escaped me this time, but don't think that it ends here. Somehow, somewhere, I will find you, and I will kill you. Don't try to call the police. I'm coming for you. Jeff the Killer." I let the paper fall to the floor as my hands began uncontrollably shaking. I started to breathe heavily and could feel my heart throbbing in my chest. Gripping my short, dark brown hair, I ran through all the options I might have. My eyes stung as salty tears streamed down my face. I had to get out of here, out of the state of Oregon, or even out of the country. I dropped my hands to my sides and ran into my parents' bedroom, stopping at the doorway and trying not to gag at the horrific scene. I slowly made my way to the safe in the corner of the room. Luckily, my parents didn't trust me with the safe code when I turned 16. I slowly turned the dial. 15, 34, 2. A slight click sounded, and the door opened. I gathered the money left in the safe, which was roughly $700. Quickly, I grabbed my dad's travel backpack and filled it with a few cans of food, a few bottles of water, and one of my dad's 460 revolver guns. I swung the bag over my shoulder and ran out of my house without looking back. I walked for quite some time until I ended up at the train station. I bought a ticket for San Francisco, California. I sat in my seat glancing at all the people around me. Anyone here could be the person following me. I couldn't trust anyone. I hugged my knees to my chest and stared off into space. A beautiful woman sat in front of me. She looked as though she was about 20. She had long curled black hair that fell below her waist. Her eyes turned up to mine, and I noticed something strange about them. They were completely black and soulless. Her pointed red lips turned into a small smirk as she batted her large eyelashes at me. Her voice was soft and sultry as she calmly spoke. "Would you like something, darling?" I turned my head down and felt my face go hot. I stuttered under my breath. No." I heard a small, breathy giggle. "My name's Jane." I looked up at her again, and she continued. "I get off at the next stop. I'm after an old friend." The way she spoke sounded bitter and unforgiving, not as though someone would speak about a friend. But I wasn't about to start a conversation, even with the unbelievably sexy woman as she was. I felt my conscience beginning to fade as my exhaustion grew almost overwhelming. I was about to fall asleep when I felt warm breath against my ear. "Don't go to sleep. You might not wake up." I was too tired to heed the warning and drifted away from my bitter reality. "Finally, you're asleep." A quiet, growly voice echoed in my head, and I felt a cold, steely object pressed against my neck. My eyes darted around to notice my surroundings had completely changed. Where am I? I tried to pull away from whatever had a hold of me, but the grasp grew stronger. "Why should that matter to you? You're with me now." I fell forward onto my face as my captor shoved me to the ground with such brutal force. I looked up, noticing his odd features. His face was pale, almost as if he had never seen the sun before. He was dressed in a dirty white hoodie and black slacks. His skin looked as if it had been stretched across his face for a scar beyond repair. His hair was singed black, and his mouth permanently in a demonic grin, cut from his lips to his cheekbones. His eyes burned into mine, unblinking and rimmed in black. I bit back a stifled whimper as he kicked me in the stomach. "No one escapes me," he yelled at me, kicking me again, but this time in my face. I felt warm blood trickle from my nose and drip onto the floor. "What are you going to do with me?" I whispered, avoiding his gaze. Jeff broke into a fit of psychotic laughter. He wrapped his hands over his middle and bent over as his laughing became louder. "I think it should be obvious by now." He crouched on the floor and put his face an inch from mine, his rancid breath on my face. "Going to kill you, idiot." His knife dug farther into my neck and finally broke the skin. Clenching my teeth, I opened my eyes and stared into his remorseless, damaged soul. As he manically laughed while digging his knife into my neck, I slowly reached for my father's gun. I took the gun in my hand and shot it directly where his heart should be. Jeff's hand slowly reached his chest where I had shot him. His mouth stretched wide in an evil smile, and his laughing became slow and cruel. "You must be joking. Do you really think that a small gun could stop me?" He brought the knife down to my chest and pricked right between my ribs before thrusting it in my heart. The last thing I heard before my whole world went black was 3 broken words. "Go to sleep."